Thank you all for coming. This is so exciting to be offering this with Augie. I'm Stacey McCann. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I am a mom to sweet and spicy, as I like to call her, a 6-year-old. She's technically 6.5, and she would definitely want me to tell you that. I'm going to also, now that I'm thinking about it, pull up the chat too, just in case. You're welcome to send questions anytime. Um, okay. Let's go back to this. Um, oh, sorry, I want to make sure I can see everybody. No, that's not right. And see my slides at the same time, but that's okay. Um, so I'm a private practice owner, clinically licensed therapist in the St. Louis area. I'm actually on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. I own my own private practice, and I've been in private practice for about 3 years. I have a long history as a trained therapist outside of that with schools, with nonprofits, with private clinics, and through all of that, what I what I found is sort of a common theme with my work is that I was working with parents through that whole time. I did a lot of work with kids for a minute, but when I'm working with kids, you can imagine, obviously, I'm working with their parents. And when I say parents, a lot of who are showing up to sessions, to my work, are moms, right? So been working with moms for almost 15 years at this point. I became a mom. In 2019, just before the pandemic hit. She was about 10 months old when the pandemic hit. So that was a huge part of our first year together. And as with everybody, the pandemic shifted my trajectory of my career, and I started to see sort of this spotlight on mothers as the pandemic shifted, as mothers were staying home to stay home with their kids, to be their kids' teacher, to stay home for childcare. Women were leaving the workforce, they still are. Um, and it just seemed to exacerbate this already heavy issue of carrying the mental load, carrying the physical load, and the emotional load at home. So that's sort of where my work trajectory went. I launched my practice in 2022 with the goal of supporting mothers in this work through therapy and through support. Um, I am a trained facilitator in for the Fair Play Method, which you may have heard about. The Fair Play Method is a program that is designed to balance the domestic labor in the home, including emotional labor and the mental load. It's a great program. It doesn't fit everybody. Not everybody is the right candidate for it. Happy to talk about that at any point. But I am a trained facilitator, which means I have access to a lot of their research and a lot of their data, as well as the program itself and some of the strategies used. So I can talk about that when we talk about the mental load. Um, I do also have a coaching practice in addition to my therapy practice, and that's so I can provide parent coaching worldwide. As a therapist, you are bound by your licensure state. So I am licensed in Missouri and Illinois, but with coaching, I can serve people worldwide. It's just like a different service. So that's a little bit about me. I am going to pull this back up so I can see everybody again. Um, all right, let me get a different view on this. Maybe that's helpful. I want to see everybody. And I can't see everybody, and it's driving me a little bit nuts that I can't see everybody. Okay. Well, that's okay. So as we kind of go along, I'm not going to specifically focus on fair play, but if you have questions, I would love to hear them. This was a free presentation I gave for whether fair play was appropriate for any given set of partners, but also like how to apply the fair play method if your partner is not on board. So it was really interesting. I had a lot of people sign up for that, but I'm going to actually move forward. Into sort of some steps on applying this information on the mental load. If this is sort of the first time sort of considering what it is and how to sort of work through it as a mom, living your day-to-day life and having to carry it as you go. So What is the mental load? The mental load I consider to be the three P's, which are planning, prepping, and predicting. So the mental load is not a list of tasks, right? Those are chores, that's domestic labor. Um, the mental load for consideration of like for these purposes are the planning, predicting, and prepping for those tasks, right? So when you think about the dishwasher as an example, the unloading of the dishwasher is a task. It's not the mental load. The mental load is knowing that my child's favorite water bottle is in the dishwasher. It's dirty. It has spaghetti sauce on it. It needs to be washed. It probably needs to be washed on heavy load because the spaghetti's been sitting on it for a day. And she needs that water bottle for Friday because Friday's field day, and she needs the water bottle that holds extra water because she's going to be outside the whole day. Like all of that is the mental load. When you think about the mental load for bigger things, right? Like birthday parties, like holidays, like upcoming, right, with Christmas, the mental load is very heavy. It's very multifaceted, and it almost always falls onto the woman. So thanks, Mackenzie said this is my brain. I hope that I can verbalize many people's inner thoughts with this conversation. So when we think about the mental load, and we think about why we carry it, how did we get here, right? There's some unlearning we have to do. And that's why I included this slide, which is that as we get here and we realize this is really heavy and I'm the only one carrying it, we go through sort of a myriad of feelings, right? Like we might be angry about that. We might be sad, depressed, grieving about that. We may also internalize that and start to blame ourselves. So, with this unlearning piece, let me talk about how we got here. Some of those thoughts that we start to sort of beat ourselves up with are like, I shouldn't actually need help. I should be able to do this. Everyone can do this. I should be super mom. That's the goal, right? Like it's natural for moms to carry all of this. We're the ones who care. We should be the ones carrying all of this. Our partners don't care. It's fine. Maybe my standards are too high. Maybe the favorite water bottle in the dishwasher is not a big deal. So maybe I should just tell myself to kind of bring those down and not do as much, right? It's also just easier if I do it myself, right? It's really hard to explain the mental load and to verbalize it. So I'll just take it on. I'll just do it myself. It's easier that way. I should be supporting my partner's career. He worked really hard to get here. And I should be supporting that. He makes more money than I do. So it makes sense for me to carry all of this. I'm working, but I make less money. Also, money is valuable. We need money. We need finances in our home. And if I can put the time in to ensure that my partner is making income, then I should be doing that because time is less valuable than money. So these are all thoughts that I can tell you that I've had and my clients have had about the mental load. And these are all thoughts that are really important to sort of unlearn, right? We all need help. This is impossible. Mothering in 2025, that term intensive mothering is a real thing. We're mothering under scrutiny. We're mothering in comparison on social media, under judgment. And we still are mothering within this supermom ideology where we should want to have it all. And if we don't want to have it all or try to have it all, there's something wrong with us. And if we fail at having it all or being it all, then it's our fault. We're doing something wrong, right? But the problem is that having it all and being it all is impossible. We know that. It's impossible, and we're set up to fail from the start. We're set up on this path alone that we, from birth, women are often reinforced for putting others first, for being, for hiding, being seen and not heard, right? For putting others' emotions first, for eggshelling so we don't upset other people. For kind of holding what we need inside until everyone else's needs have been met, and people pleasing, and sort of walking along this path until we have children, and then it's completely exacerbated, and we're given this giant mental load to carry as well. None of what we're talking about here, like all of these are tasks, right? All of this is labor. These are all skills. These are all skills that we can learn as parents. These aren't skills that I was born with. I was not born knowing how to change a diaper. I was not born knowing how to plan a birthday party. I wasn't born knowing how to have a memorable Christmas, right? These are all things I've learned along the way. And so we have this argument that like this stuff is natural. There's a base form of attachment that might be natural between mother and child, but all of the mental load, all domestic labor, all physical labor, and even emotional labor, none of that is natural. This is skills based. These are skills that we can teach and we can learn. So as we go on, I want you to consider some of these other questions and what unlearning like you might have to do, right? Time is valuable. Your time is valuable. I don't care what you do for work. I don't care if you get paid. I don't care if you stay home. Your time is valuable. And as a mother, your time is most valuable for the sake of that child. So time is so, so valuable. And you will know very quickly in the dynamic of your household if your partner values your time. I'm going to talk about some language that we use when we talk about the mental load. When we use certain terms, some of this came from Eve Rodsky in Fair Play Method. Some of it is are terms in popular culture that are starting to become more common, like lexicon. But I want to talk about this language because the first component of sort of coping with the mental load is starting to identify it and put language to it. There is no way that we can share this load without talking about it. It's impossible. And most of us have sort of given up on talking about it because it feels like we're banging our head against a wall constantly. But we have to talk about it in order to shift some of this load. So the language we might use, I sort of covered the mental load. Remember, it's not the task, it's the planning, the prepping, and the predicting of that task. Invisible work. Invisible work are all the things going on in our heads that happen around the home that nobody really sees. The problem is that most mothers, especially like when my clients call me, the most common word they use is invisible. They feel invisible. Nobody notices that they're cleaning up after their kids go to bed at night. Nobody notices that the toilet paper gets replaced. Nobody notices that, like, I never seem to run out of toothpaste. There's always a fresh tube here. Weird. I saw on somebody's Instagram the other day that, like, dad was quoted as saying, like, it seems like our kids' fingernails never grow. They never get very long. I wonder why that is. The fingernail fairy comes and clips all the fingernails, right? So it's this invisible work that happens to keep everybody functioning. And that can be the basic, like food, snacks, rest, basic needs, all the way up to things like the favorite water bottle that is just like something as a mom that I may want to do, right? So that work is in the background and it's invisible. Second shift is a term, and one of my favorite terms, I call it sort of the 5 to 9 shift. So when you come in, you come home from your 9 to 5, you clock out at work, you come in, both parents, if two parents have committed to raising a family, have engaged in the act of creating children, then two parents come home from their day shift. I don't care what their day shift was, whether it was paid or unpaid, at home, in a workplace, it doesn't matter. They come home and they both clock in for the second shift. They both clock in for 5 to 9. The 5 to 9 shift is not dependent on who worked harder during the day, who's more tired than the other. The second shift is for both parents. They can then work together to figure out who needs a break. How do we manage that? We're both exhausted. How do we figure out how we both get our needs met during that second shift? But the expectation is that you come home and you clock in from 5 to 9 because you are a member of that family and you are responsible for supporting and raising those children. She-fault is basically the female term for default that typically in a heterosexual home where there is a man and a woman, the woman is the she-fault for almost everything that is related to parenting, to children, and to the home. That's, again, a product of a greater societal shift, a societal path. But it's also, even in individual households, typically the dynamic. Emotional labor. So we talked about like domestic labor being like chores, right? Emotional labor is supporting the emotions of the people around you in your home, right? We're a connected like network. We impact each other, just like in the environment, like the rivers impact the grass, impact the trees, impact the clouds. That's how our home is. We impact each other. But typically, moms are taking on the emotional labor of ensuring everyone's needs are met, everyone's emotional needs are met, everyone's emotions are intact, everyone is happy, peacekeeping. And they are taking on that task for everyone, including their partners, a lot of the time. Typically, again, in a heterosexual relationship, when we have a man and a woman in a home with children, this is not the case for everybody, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but the vast majority of men entering this dynamic do not have close contact with their emotions. They often have been out of touch with them for a long time, and then that's not a single man issue. That is, again, a societal issue where we are teaching men not to feel them, or that anger is the only acceptable emotion. So when we enter this situation, men are typically out of touch with their emotions, and women are almost hyper in touch with others' emotions because they've been having to manage them, often going back to childhood where they've managed their own parents' emotions. So Women are coming into this situation managing their own emotions, of course, managing their partner's emotions, and then trying to raise emotionally intelligent children. That's emotional labor. Eggshelling is emotional labor when you have to walk on eggshells so you don't disturb the peace of the family. Um, Mom rage, I'm not going to go into depth on mom rage because it is, we could talk for an hour plus on mom rage, but just so you know, mom rage, like at the core, is an unmet need. Rage is a symptom, not the core problem. The core problem is that your needs aren't being met, and the rage is communicating that. Obviously, we don't want to rage as communication, but we need to listen to it and we need to figure out, why am I here? Why am I snapping every single day? Why am I screaming when somebody drops water on the floor when it's not a big deal? Mom rage are unmet needs. Time equity is a term that both of our time is valuable, right? Time equity means that time is valuable regardless of whether it's paid or not, regardless of whether it's in the home or out of the home, regardless of whether it's parenting work or corporate C-suite headquarter work, right? Time is valuable, and all time is valuable, and my time and your time are both valuable. Um, and then this last term, this minimum standard of care, basically what this talks about is like standards, right? We talk about, are my standards too high? This minimum standard of care, if two couples are, or two parts of a couple are on board with working together, this is a fantastic strategy to start with, which is, what is our minimum standard of care for bath time? What do we both agree needs to happen during our child's bath, and why, right? Maybe our minimum standard of care for bath is that we get a little bit of soap on a washcloth, that it gets wipes them down from head to toe, and that's pretty much it. Or maybe the minimum standard of care is more than that. But we need to talk about it and we need to agree, because if we're going to shift any of this mental load and physical labor to each other, then we both have to come to an agreement on, what are we doing to complete this task, right? The minimum standard of care also helps people sort of empathize with why I do things the way that I do them. So there's a reason I do bath the way that I do it. And maybe there's a strategy in washing during the bath that supports later bedtime routine that I've never actually said out loud. I just do it because I know it makes my life easier. So minimum of standard of care allows that, for that conversation to take place, where we say, well, here's why I do it the way I do it. And how can we sort of agree on a middle ground to where we can both complete the bath and everybody's satisfied with it. Just a reminder, you're welcome to put questions in the chat. It is popping up for me so I can see it. So that's some language. And I always start with language because, like I said before, nothing will change and nothing will shift until we verbalize what's going on. It is not fair that we have to do the verbalizing here. It is not fair that we have to initiate this conversation. And it is not fair that we have to be sort of the sole bearer of all of this. But here we are. And one of my favorite things to say is that I would rather keep talking and be loud and be too much and be big about this than drown in the silent resentment that will absolutely take you over. I will not allow it to drown me. And if I'm going to be stuck in this situation, I'm going to start talking about it. So I'm going to switch slides. I talk a little bit about the cards here. And again, I'm not going to go into detail about that, but I do want to I want to briefly touch on permission. So we'll talk about talking about it and what does that mean, right? But like, in order to talk about it, we have to give ourselves some permission. These permission slips for ourselves. We have to unlearn a lot of this stuff, and we have to start giving ourselves more grace, more empathy, and more permission. So here are three very important things that to start giving yourself permission to do. One is to be unavailable. Alone time is a basic need. And I hope that you've been told that before, but your time alone is absolutely a basic need for your mental and emotional health. So it is okay to give yourself permission to be unavailable. That may mean from your kids, it may mean from your partner, or it may mean from your calendar. It is okay to start blocking off time that's not just taken by an appointment, that maybe is just an hour here or there where you are unavailable to the outside world and you are alone. Granting yourself permission to cope with mom guilt and mom shame and let it go. I'm not saying it's never going to happen again. Again, we could have a whole conversation on mom guilt as well. But the progress down this path is being able to hold your mom guilt, see it, name it. I feel guilty about taking that hour for myself when I could be with my child. Uh, you can hold that and at the same time hold, but this hour helps me be a better mom when I have to come back and do bedtime routine. I will be more patient, more tolerant, and it will save our relationship tonight if I can take an hour, breathe, and come back for bedtime routine. So being able to hold both those realities at the same time is how you cope with mom guilt, and then you let it go and you do it anyway. And then the third is granting yourself permission to use your voice. Many, many, many women have been taught that their voice isn't needed, it's not powerful. Again, seen and not heard, right? Don't bother other people with what you're thinking and feeling. So oftentimes from ground zero, we have to grant ourselves permission to actually use the voice that we have. Um, by the way, these are all ways you can kind of get back in touch with your mom gut, with your gut, with your instincts. Most of us have lost touch with our guts and our natural instincts on decision making. And so these are all ways to kind of get back in touch with that. Um, Another way to grant yourself permission is to pursue your unicorn space. So unicorn space is a concept again from Eve Rodsky. It's a second book to Fair Play. I actually sometimes like it better. But unicorn space is about finding your creative space as a mother and as a woman. And I say creative, and I don't just mean like painting or knitting. Creative is any space in which you do something that fills your cup, supports you, supports your mental and emotional well-being, and allows you to process and sort of decompress and get stuff out of your body. So creative space can be exercise, it can be running, it can be a workout class, it can be social time. It can also be actual creation of a product, of a thing. It can be cooking. It can be painting. It can be whatever you want it to be. Most of us have not had the ability or time or space to do many of those things. But this is permission to create it. Um, and then, all of this summarized is basically permission to block time for yourself like it's a priority because it is. So with my clients, what I tell them is it's time to prioritize themselves on the same pedestal as their children, not above their children, on the same pedestal as their children. Most of us have not even touched the pedestal in decades, right? But this is permission to be on that pedestal. You will be a better mother if you meet your needs and if you set the boundaries to make that happen. So then the last thing I'm going to touch on with this is the way that I find the most effective in initiating this process where you start naming this out loud, you start verbalizing it, you start granting yourself permission and start sort of prioritizing your own needs is to take these weekly check-ins. And weekly check-ins, I think are fabulous to do with your partner. I support a lot of my clients sort of through this work, how to do it, how to engage, all of that stuff. But I like to make it fun. You get carry out, have a glass of wine or have, a preferred drink or whatever. Do it after the kids go to bed or when they're not home. It's really important to be able to disconnect from parenting while you do this. But a weekly meeting, a weekly house meeting with you and your partner would be absolutely ideal. My number one suggestion for a weekly house meeting is to start with your calendar. You don't need to talk about all the heavy stuff in this first meeting. Focus on the calendar. Open both your calendars. Say, let's just prep for the week ahead. Let's look at our calendars and see, oh, there's a dentist appointment. Oh, I forgot I'm meeting so-and-so for lunch that day. Whatever it is, verbalize it to your partner. See on Thursday that like, oh, we have this event at her school. What's the mental load for that event? What are the tasks required for that event? How do we share the tasks required for that event? So start the conversation with your calendar and stay there if that's what feels comfortable. But what that will do is it will open a door for a safe place and time to start bringing up these topics. Christmas is coming. If I can start these meetings now, then in a month when Christmas is here or Thanksgiving, I know we should talk about that first. But when in a month when those start to happen, we've had this meeting under our belts and I can start to bring up, wow, Thanksgiving is starting to really overwhelm me. Here's all the tasks involved. Which ones are you taking? Right? And that sentence, which ones are you taking? It sounds like it has a question mark, but it's actually a period because it's an expectation, not a request. Which ones are you taking? Tell me which ones you're taking off the list so we can share this task. So those weekly check-ins are important. Now, realistically, several of my clients have partners who won't do this. Or they'll do it, but they won't bring anything to the table. They'll show up, they'll do the bare minimum, they won't engage. So I also, if that's the case for you, I want you to do this with yourself as well. 15 minutes every single week to focus on what's working for you, what's not working for you, what are the tasks for the week? Is there anything I can outsource? Can I simplify anything? Can I say no to anything? And where in this week am I plugging in my battery? Where in this week am I recharging? How am I getting my basic needs met? How am I exercising? How am I making sure I eat real meals? How am I resting? How am I chatting with a friend? Um, be your own mental load manager, right? If your partner is not willing or engaged to do this, and I have thoughts on that, we can talk more about that. You got to do it yourself. Again, there's no drowning anymore. You've got to refuse to allow yourself to drown. It's not your fault that you're here. It's not your fault that you're carrying all of this, but we are taking control back. Okay. So then the other piece to this is like, I do this work and I encourage women and mothers to do this work because I want people to feel like they're their own self-advocates. And I want people to down the road, 10 years from now, have shifted some of this load or at least made it very well known what you prioritize, what you focus on in your motherhood, and be very clear in that process. There's this future component of like, I don't want to be here in 10 years. I want to feel more balanced. I want to feel more regulated. I want to feel like I'm meeting my own needs. I want to know who I am. And I think this is the start of it. So, okay, let's see. This is some of my information here. I am actually going to put this in the chat so that you can see it. And I would love to open up for questions. All right, there's some questions in the chat, so I'm going to check them now. But you're welcome to pop on your video and ask questions or just type them here. I believe it is definitely being recorded, so I will confirm with Auggie if they're going to send it out. I think they post it or have it somewhere for people to see. So Mackenzie had asked, like, bringing this to a partner, right? Without it becoming an argument. The weekly house meeting is my absolute favorite tactic. It is the number one thing, like the healthiest couples I know are doing, that they're coming together every week and looking at a calendar and making sure that their needs are being met on both sides. There is only so much and so far you can go. If you are married or in a relationship with a partner who is unwilling to be involved in this. As far as your relationship. There's a long way you can go for yourself. But we cannot control how the other person takes this information and how they respond to it. So a lot of times when we have initiated this conversation in the past, it's become an argument, right? Our partner gets defensive. They say, you think I'm a bad husband? You think I'm a bad dad? You think I'm terrible at this? All I can say is we start with this house meeting, and the second technique is the simplest technique in all of therapy, which is using I statements, right? You come at this from your own perspective. So instead of starting a meeting with your partner and saying, you suck at this, you didn't do this right, you dropped the ball on that, I want you to come at it and start it with an I. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling burnt out. I'm feeling like I can't handle all of this. I need help. Focus on the I, right? We'll get to the problems, but focus on the I and verbalizing how you feel in this conversation. It will typically lead to less defensiveness. It will typically lead to less of that immediate wall coming in, because anytime somebody hears you, the wall comes up, right? We start to defend ourselves. So start with I statements. And also because that's self-prioritization, right? Like, I want you to use the word I first because we're prioritizing ourselves now. Okay, somebody, Taylor had submitted in the chat that her and her husband's upbringings were very different, that she was an emotional caretaker for others starting at a very young age, and that she's working on it. Good for you, Taylor. Her husband is the youngest. He was babied, doted on by his parents. He never learned to take care of others emotionally. I think you change these patterns with therapy. I think you change these patterns first individually in therapy and then as couples in couples therapy with a good couples counselor. Both people have to realize their differences here, right? So like, um, Taylor has realized sort of this information about herself, but her husband has to realize it too, and not just from being told by Taylor, right? He also has to realize it through his own experience and through his own sort of lifelong upbringing. It has to click for him basically. We can't really make that happen. But what Taylor can do is keep talking about it, work on herself, go to therapy. Another kind of thing that I tell my clients is, we can't force our partners to do anything, right? But my hope is that if they see us taking care of ourselves, going to therapy, working on ourselves, and they sort of see our light coming back, right? Like we all have this like internal light. And I feel like by the time our kids are 3 and 4 years old, our light is like gone, right? But if they can see our light coming back because we have energy and we're setting boundaries for ourselves and we're advocating for our needs, my hope is that they see, hey, I want that too. I want that light for myself and for each other. And it starts to click for them as well. So I think when you have these like super distinct familial patterns, like from family of origin stuff, therapy, and then once you've done some individual work, then couples therapy. It is absolutely possible for this relationship to work, but they need to kind of work on communication styles, and that can be a really nice thing to work on in the safety of a therapist's office with a therapist as sort of this neutral party to support that process. Um, Amber asked, at what point should these attempts to using fair play or like to sort of talk it through and turn it into a conversation with a counselor or something more serious? I think what you're saying is like, at what point do we need to make bigger moves here, right? Like, at what point when we see these conversations happening and we don't see enough progress? I think if you notice that you are turning the focus to yourself, you're prioritizing yourself, you're self-advocating to meet those needs, but you're still sort of being stonewalled from doing it, right? So I'm trying to prioritize my own time. I'm trying to set some buffer time. I'm trying to advocate for like an hour to myself on a Saturday or on a Sunday so I can go do whatever I'd like to do. But when it happens, oops, my husband scheduled a golf outing and forgot that I had that on the calendar. Or oops, like he texted me 75 times while I was gone for an hour because he couldn't find the diapers. And then like he wasn't sure the ketchup was gone. What do I do? Or which water bottle's their favorite? Like when you start to see things like weaponized incompetence or like this like just constant like blocking of like I just can't get it done. I can't do it. I have the clarity in place. I know what I need to do, but I'm being stonewalled from doing it. I think at that point, it might be helpful to have a third party support the communication piece. That's not a guarantee that this is going to work, but I do think at that point it would be helpful as if you know what you need to do, but you can't actually put it into practice because you don't have the support from your partner to do it. Um, I also have other sort of specific signs that like this needs more professional support. I've had couples who deal with like icing out, right? Where their partner will struggle emotionally and ice them out. I've literally had several clients say the same thing, which is that they'll go to the basement, shut the door, and they won't talk to me for 3 days. And yes, they're coping with their own mental health stuff, but that's a very clear tactic, right? We're shutting this down. I refuse to engage. I refuse to talk about it. So like things like that, as those are occurring, if you don't notice that like my partner's willing to be vulnerable, my partner's willing to engage in this stuff, my partner's willing to get messy about it and like and feel a little raw about it without attacking or without getting defensive, that I think calls for a professional. Um, okay, Mackenzie asked, how do you accept that your partner isn't going to do it the way you would and accept that they're doing it in general? Okay, yes, the minimum standard of care. This is the situation I think the majority of people are in, right? Like there's a lot of talk about like, well, men are doing way more than they have previously, and I don't disagree. And I think many men live in the middle where they want to help, they want to do more, they just don't really know how to go about it, and we have so much going on up here, it's hard for us to explain it or express it. So we sit together and our partner's willing to take the dishwasher, willing to take the bath, but they don't do it the same way we do, right? I think the first is there's two facets to this. One is giving yourself permission to let something go. I don't think you should lower your standards, but I do think if you can look at a bath and say, okay, I do this the same way every single time. It works for me. It works great. Is it, if I take that piece away, is it causing harm to my child? Is it causing emotional harm to my child? Is it causing physical harm to my child? Is it ruining the situation? Is it making things worse? Will I have to pay a price later for that? Or do I do it that way because it's easier for me and I like it that way? And I think there's a difference there, right? So if the difference in how we complete a task causes harm, creates a meltdown every single time with our child, is obviously like emotionally painful for them. And here's one example of that, which is husband takes over lunch packing. And mom asks, what did he pack for lunch? And he says, oh, I packed a peanut butter and jelly, and I packed these chips and that cookie. And mom says, well, she doesn't like any of those things. She won't eat it. I don't know about you, but I'm not willing to see my child come home from school several days in a row having not eaten their lunch. So that's one example of where I would say, like, this is not acceptable, right? Like, we need to share information here. You need to ask and figure out, like, what will they actually eat for lunch? Versus like a bath time where we, dad washes baby in a different way. And maybe it's, there's still, I don't know, there's still some tasks to be done there, but it's an acceptable baseline for washing a baby, and we kind of just back off from that and say, okay, we're good there. So I think, is this causing emotional or physical harm to my child if I let them do it the way they want? Secondly to this is, if we've all taken on these tasks and gotten good at them from practice, right? Like, the reason I do a bath so well and so efficiently is practice. The reason I plan a birthday party so well and so efficiently is practice, right? It's only because I've done it before. And so there's an element of this that if our partner is taking tasks, we have to allow them practice. We have to allow them the same amount of practice that we got. And we didn't get to choose that, but we are choosing this. That I have to choose to let him practice with this, and to see that there may be a price to pay for doing it inefficiently or wrong, right? So if there's no emotional or physical harm done, and your partner is taking on a task, especially if it's a new one that they've not taken before, I would absolutely get the heck out of there. I would leave. I would go into another room. I'd put in your AirPods. I would sit on the porch. I would let him do it. Let it be. Let it happen. I want him to screw it up. I want him to make mistakes, because again, that's how he will learn that this is not efficient or not the way to do it, right? I want him to forget the diaper bag. I want him to forget an extra change of clothes, because I want him to learn, and that will be the way that he becomes an expert at it, and increases the confidence so he can do it again. So it is minimum standard of care. It is having that conversation. It is coping with differences in task completion as long as there's no emotional and physical harm done. And it is allowing for practice, allowing for mistakes so that they can learn how to complete that task and be confident in that task. These are awesome questions. I'm going to put in the chat my email. I'm going to put in the chat my website. And my Instagram is where I spend the most time, which is also there. I really appreciate everyone being here. You're welcome to send a last question if you'd like. I do think it'll be recorded. I will confirm that with Auggie and make sure that they send out a message or something on their Instagram account. This is very Instagram based, so all of the information will be there. Please reach out though if you have any follow-up questions. I love talking about this. I can talk further about fair play or answer any questions there too. I appreciate everyone being here so much, especially, I don't know about you, we did not have school yesterday, so this very much feels like a Monday. So this, we're just jumping right into the week. Have a lovely week though, and a great fall, and I will hope to talk to you all soon.